I want to tell you about something that's happening right now, in 2026, that nobody's talking about, honestly. Men are more connected than ever before, and yet they're drowning in loneliness. I'm talking about real loneliness, the kind that sits in your chest at 3 in the morning, the kind that makes you scroll through your phone looking at hundreds of contacts and realizing that you can't call a single one of them with what's actually on your mind. The kind that makes you wonder if anyone would even notice if you just disappeared for a week. And here's what's crazy. The samurai, centuries ago in feudal Japan, understood exactly why this happens and exactly how to fix it. But before I tell you what they knew, I need to tell you what's really going on. Let me paint you a picture of what loneliness looks like in 2026. You wake up, and the first thing you do is check your phone. You've got notifications, messages on 3 different apps, comments on something you posted. Your screen tells you that you're connected to thousands of people. You go to work, and you're in meetings all day. You're talking, collaborating, sending emails, jumping on calls. You're surrounded by people. After work, you hit the gym. Guys nod at you. You nod back. Maybe someone asks how many sets you have left. You go home, order food on an app, scroll through social media while you eat. You see your friends posting about their lives. You double tap. You comment something. They respond with an emoji. You play video games online with people from around the world. You're in a voice chat. You're coordinating, strategizing, winning. Before bed, you watch someone streaming on Twitch or YouTube. Thousands of people are in the chat. You type something. Someone responds. You feel seen, and then you lay down in bed, and the silence hits you like a wave. And you realize something that terrifies you. You haven't had a real conversation in weeks, maybe months. You haven't told anyone what you're actually thinking. You haven't been asked how you really are by someone who would notice if you lied. You're surrounded by people all day, every day, and you've never felt more alone in your entire life. Now, here's where most people get this wrong. They think the problem is that we're not social enough. They say men need to put themselves out there more, join clubs, go to events, make more friends. But that's not it. That's not the problem at all. Because the loneliest men I know are the ones who are out there the most. They've got packed social calendars. They're at every happy hour, every networking event, every weekend gathering. And they're still completely alone. The problem isn't the quantity of interactions, it's the quality. Or more specifically, it's the depth. And this is exactly what the samurai understood that we've completely forgotten. In feudal Japan, there was a concept called kenzoku. It doesn't translate perfectly into English, but the closest approximation is family bonds, or connection through shared purpose. But it meant something much deeper than what we think of as friendship today. Kenzoku was the bond between warriors who had faced death together, who had bled together, who knew each other's fears, weaknesses, and failures, and stood by each other anyway. These weren't drinking buddies. These weren't networking contacts. These were men who would die for each other, not because they had to, but because the bond was so deep that betrayal was literally unthinkable. And here's the critical part. These bonds weren't formed through fun. They weren't formed through shared interests or hobbies or having a good time together. They were formed through shared struggle, shared sacrifice, and shared purpose. Let me tell you about a man I know. I'll call him Marcus. Marcus is 32. He works in tech, makes good money. He's got a nice apartment, drives a decent car, stays in shape. On paper, his life looks great. And socially, Marcus is doing everything right according to modern standards. He's got over 1,000 followers on Instagram. He's in 3 group chats that are active every day. He plays in a recreational basketball league every Tuesday. He goes to his company's social events. He's got co-workers he gets lunch with regularly. He's even got a best friend from college that he games with online a few times a week. But Marcus came to me 6 months ago, and he said something I'll never forget. He said, "I feel like I'm living inside a glass box. I can see everyone. Everyone can see me. We're all waving at each other and smiling, but nobody can actually touch me, and I can't actually touch them. And I'm starting to think this is just what life is now. Marcus isn't unique. He's the norm. And what he's describing is the exact opposite of what the samurai cultivated. See, the samurai didn't just spend time together. They revealed themselves to each other. And there's a massive difference. Modern friendship is about presenting your best self, your highlight reel, the version of you that's got it together. You show up to hang out after you've already dealt with your problems, after you've already processed your emotions, after you've already figured things out. You show people the finished product. The samurai did the opposite. They showed each other the raw material, the doubt, the fear, the confusion, the weakness. And they did this not because they were weak, but because they understood that real strength is only possible when you have people who know your weaknesses and guard them with you. There was a practice among samurai called tsuyoshi, which meant to be strong, but it had a specific connotation. It didn't mean physical strength or even courage in battle. It meant the strength to be vulnerable with your brothers, to admit when you were afraid before a battle, to confess when you had doubts about your lord, to reveal when you were struggling with a decision, and the other samurai wouldn't try to fix it. They wouldn't give advice unless asked. They would just witness it. They would just say, "I see you, I hear you, and I'm still here." That's kenzoku. That's the bond. And we don't have it anymore. Instead, what do we have? We have transactional relationships. Every interaction has a purpose. Every conversation is either networking, coordinating logistics, or entertainment. We meet up to do something, watch the game, play golf, go to the bar, lift weights. But we never meet up to just be with each other, to sit in the hard stuff together, to tell the truth about what's actually happening inside. And because of that, we never actually know each other. We know each other's opinions about sports and politics. We know each other's jobs and hobbies and weekend plans. But we don't know each other's fears. We don't know what keeps each other up at night. We don't know what each other's lives actually feel like from the inside. And without that, there's no real connection. There's just proximity. Marcus started realizing this after his dad died. It was sudden, heart attack. Marcus took a week off work, handled the funeral, came back, and everyone asked how he was, and he said, "I'm okay, thanks." And that was it. Conversation over, back to normal. But he wasn't okay. He was devastated. He was questioning everything about his life. He was having panic attacks in his car before work. He couldn't sleep. He couldn't focus. And he had all these people around him, but he couldn't tell any of them because it felt like there was no space for it. Like everyone expected him to just process it privately and move on. So he did. He pushed it down, put on the mask, and kept going. And 6 months later, he realized he'd just carried this massive thing completely alone. And that's when he understood. He had plenty of people in his life, but he had nobody. The samurai would have seen this as a spiritual emergency, not Marcus's grief, but his isolation in it. because they understood that a man who suffers alone becomes brittle. He becomes hard in the wrong ways. He loses flexibility. He loses the ability to adapt. And eventually, he breaks. But a man who suffers with his brothers becomes tempered, like steel in a forge. The heat doesn't destroy him. It makes him stronger, but only if he's not alone in it. The samurai had a saying, "Tanin no fuku wa yuki no gotoshi." It means another's happiness is like snow, meaning it melts away, but another's suffering shared becomes the foundation of an unbreakable bond. Now you might be thinking, okay, but how? How do I build that in 2026 when everyone's surface level and nobody wants to be vulnerable? And that's the right question, because the answer isn't what you think. The answer isn't to go to your current friends and suddenly start trauma dumping. That doesn't work. You can't force depth. You can't manufacture kenzoku by just deciding to be more open. The samurai understood that these bonds were forged, not found. They were created through a specific process, and that process started with one thing: shared ordeal. The samurai didn't become brothers by hanging out. They became brothers by going through something hard together. Training that pushed them to their limits. Battles where death was real, long journeys with no comfort, fasting, cold water, purification, sitting in meditation until their legs went numb. The hardship wasn't the point. The point was that when you go through something genuinely difficult with someone, you see who they really are. The mask comes off. The performance ends. What's left is the raw truth of that person, and if you can stand together in that truth, without judgment, without trying to fix each other, just witnessing and enduring together, that's when kenzoku forms. That's when loneliness ends. Marcus and I talked about this, and he was skeptical. He said, "So what, I'm supposed to find other guys and just make life artificially hard? That sounds insane." And I said, "No, life is already hard. You're just going through it alone. The question is, are you willing to stop pretending it's not hard? And are you willing to find even one other man who's willing to stop pretending with you?" That landed with him, because he realized that the loneliness wasn't because life was easy. It was because he was performing like it was easy while dying inside. 2 weeks later, Marcus reached out to Jake, his friend from college, the one he gamed with. And instead of hopping online to play like usual, Marcus just said, "Hey man, can we just talk? I'm going through something and I don't want to do it alone anymore." Jake was quiet for a second. Then he said, "Yeah, me too, actually." That conversation lasted 4 hours. They didn't solve anything. They didn't fix each other's problems. Marcus talked about his dad, about feeling lost, about being terrified that his life didn't mean anything. Jake talked about his marriage falling apart, about feeling like a failure, about not knowing who he was anymore outside of his job. And when it was over, nothing had changed externally, but everything had changed internally. Because for the first time in years, both of them had been actually seen by another man. Not the performance, the reality. And that's the beginning of kenzoku. But here's where it gets deeper. The samurai didn't stop there. Because one conversation doesn't build a bond, one moment of vulnerability doesn't cure loneliness. What the samurai did was create structure around these relationships. They had rituals, daily practices that reinforced the bond. They trained together every morning. They ate together. They performed tea ceremony together, which was a meditation on presence and impermanence. They wrote poetry and shared it with each other. They sat in silence together and watched the moon. These weren't optional social activities. They were sacred obligations. Because the samurai understood that connection, real connection, requires maintenance. It requires repetition. It requires showing up, even when it's inconvenient. Especially when it's inconvenient. Marcus and Jake started meeting in person once a week. Every Thursday morning at 6 a.m., they'd meet at a park and do a ruck march, just walking with weighted backpacks for an hour. No phones, no distractions. Sometimes they'd talk, sometimes they wouldn't. But they showed up, every single week, no matter what. And slowly, other things started happening. Marcus told Jake when he was struggling at work. Jake told Marcus when he had a fight with his wife. They started texting each other, not memes or surface stuff, but real check-ins. How'd that meeting go? Did you talk to her? I'm proud of you for doing that. Small things, but consistent things. Things that said, I'm paying attention to your life. You matter to me. After 3 months, Marcus said something that stuck with me. He said, I didn't realize how much I was just tolerating my life until I had someone who actually cared about it. That's the shift. That's what Kenzoku does. It transforms your relationship with your own existence. Because when someone else is invested in your growth, in your struggles, in your daily reality, you can't hide from it anymore. You can't numb out. You can't just go through the motions. You have to actually live. And that's uncomfortable at first, but it's the only way out of loneliness. Now, the samurai had another concept that's critical here. It's called giri. It translates to duty or obligation, but it's more nuanced. Giri was the recognition that you owed something to the people who stood by you, not in a transactional way, like keeping score, but in a sacred way. If someone showed up for you in your darkness, you had giri to show up for them in theirs. If someone witnessed your weakness without judgment, you had giri to guard their weakness the same way. This wasn't negotiable. It wasn't conditional. It was the foundation of the bond. And the samurai took it so seriously that violating giri was considered worse than death. Because without it, Kenzoku couldn't exist. Without it, you were alone, no matter how many people surrounded you. In modern life, we've lost this completely. We treat relationships like options. We show up when it's convenient. We respond when we feel like it. We're there for people when it doesn't cost us anything. But the second it gets hard, the second someone needs us at a bad time or in a way that's uncomfortable, we disappear. We ghost. We make excuses. We say we're too busy. And then we wonder why our relationships feel hollow. The samurai would say we have no giri. And without giri, we have no right to expect Kenzoku. We have no right to expect anyone to show up for us, because we don't show up for them. Not really. Not when it matters. Marcus learned this the hard way. About 4 months into his weekly meetings with Jake, Marcus got a huge opportunity at work, a project that could make his career. But it required traveling for 2 months. He'd have to miss their Thursday mornings. And his first instinct was to just tell Jake, "Hey man, I've got to pause this for a bit. Work stuff. We'll pick it back up when I'm back." But something stopped him. He realized that if he did that, he'd be treating their bond like it was optional, like it only mattered when it was easy. So instead, Marcus called Jake and said, "I've got this situation. I don't want to break our commitment, but I also can't be there in person. What do we do?" And Jake said, "We adapt. You call me every Thursday at 6 a.m., no matter where you are. We do a phone ruck. You walk wherever you are, I walk here, and we're still together." And that's what they did. For 2 months, Marcus called Jake from hotel gyms, airport terminals, random cities, and they walked. And they talked. Or didn't talk. But they showed up. That's Geary. That's the bond. When Marcus got back, something had shifted. He realized that Jake wasn't just a friend anymore. He was a brother. And the difference is everything. A friend is someone you enjoy spending time with. A brother is someone you can't imagine your life without. A friend is someone who's there when it works for both of you. A brother is someone who's there even when it doesn't. A friend knows what you show them. A brother knows what you're hiding. And that distinction is the difference between being lonely and being connected. The samurai built armies of brothers. We've built networks of friends. And we're paying the price. There's a story about Miyamoto Musashi, the most famous samurai in Japanese history. He fought over 60 duels and never lost. He was a ronin, a masterless samurai, which meant he walked alone for most of his life. People romanticize that. They think he was this lone wolf warrior who didn't need anyone. But that's not true. In his final work, The Book of 5 Rings, Musashi wrote about something that most people miss. He wrote about regret. Not regret about battles or techniques or strategy, regret about connection. He wrote that the greatest warriors are not the ones who master the sword. They're the ones who master themselves. And you cannot master yourself in isolation. You need mirrors. You need people who reflect back to you what you can't see. And Musashi spent his whole life without that. He was surrounded by challengers, students, admirers, but he had no brothers. And at the end of his life, writing alone in a cave, he understood what that cost him. We're all making Musashi's mistake. We're optimizing for independence, for self-sufficiency, for not needing anyone. We wear it like a badge of honor. I don't need anybody. I'm good on my own. But that's not strength. That's fear. It's fear of being let down, fear of being vulnerable, fear of giving someone the power to hurt you. And the samurai would say that fear is the ultimate weakness because it keeps you alone. And a man alone is always weaker than a man with brothers, no matter how skilled or strong or intelligent he is. Always. Marcus told me something recently that I think captures this perfectly. He said, "I used to think I was lonely because I didn't have enough friends. Now I realize I was lonely because I didn't know how to be known. And I didn't know how to be known because I was terrified of what people would see if I let them in. I thought connection was about finding the right people. But it's not. It's about becoming the kind of person who can be seen and who can see others without flinching." The samurai didn't find Kenzoku. They built it by becoming men worthy of it. So how do you do this? How do you build Kenzoku in 2026? You start with one person, not 10, not a whole new social circle. 1. You find one man in your life who you think might be willing to drop the performance. Maybe it's someone you already know. Maybe it's someone you need to reach out to. And you take the risk. You say, "I want something different. I'm tired of surface level. I want to actually know you and be known. And I'm willing to do the work if you are." Most people will say no. They'll be uncomfortable. They'll deflect. They'll say they're too busy. Let them. You're not looking for most people. You're looking for one person who's ready. One person who's also tired of being lonely in a crowded room. And then you create structure. This is critical. You can't just agree to be more vulnerable and hope it happens. You need repetition. You need ritual. Pick a time. Once a week. Same day, same time. Doesn't matter what you do. Walk, lift, Sit and drink coffee, but you show up. No matter what, no canceling because you're tired, no skipping because work is busy. This is the commitment. This is Giri. And in those meetings, you practice honesty, not trauma dumping, not complaining, just truth. Here's what I'm actually dealing with. Here's what's hard right now. Here's where I'm stuck. And the other person does the same. You don't try to fix each other. You don't give unsolicited advice. You just witness. You just say, I see you. I'm here. Over time, if you both honor Giri, if you both keep showing up, something will shift. The loneliness will start to lift. Not because your life gets easier, but because you're not carrying it alone anymore. You'll start to feel what the samurai felt. That you're part of something bigger than yourself. That your struggles matter to someone. That your growth matters to someone. That if you disappeared, you'd be missed. Not by hundreds of acquaintances, by one brother who actually knows you. And one is enough. One real connection is worth more than 1,000 shallow ones. One bond of kenzoku can sustain you through anything. The samurai knew this. That's why they survived in a world of constant violence and death. Not because they were fearless, but because they weren't alone in their fear. That's why they could face impossible battles and maintain honor even in defeat. Not because they were superhuman, but because they had brothers who would carry their memory. That's why they could endure unimaginable hardship and come out stronger, not because they were tough, but because they were connected, and connection is the ultimate form of strength. In 2026, men are lonely because we've forgotten this. We've traded depth for breadth, quality for quantity, kenzoku for followers, and we're dying inside because of it. But the answer isn't more people. It's not more social events or networking or putting yourself out there. The answer is one true bond, one man who sees you, one man you see, one commitment you honor no matter what. That's how you end loneliness. That's what the samurai knew, and that's what we need to remember. Marcus isn't lonely anymore. He still has the same job, the same apartment, the same life on paper, but everything feels different now, because he has Jake, and Jake has him. They're building kenzoku, one Thursday morning at a time, one honest conversation at a time, one act of Giri at a time. And slowly, they're becoming the kind of men the samurai would recognize, not because they carry swords, but because they carry each other. And that makes all the difference.